Good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Carl. Oh no, okay. My name is Carl Olson. I am the Executive Director of the Library Foundation. Missoula Public Library Foundation supports initiatives, innovations, capital projects, and special programs at your favorite library. That would be this one. And this is one that we helped sponsor. I want to thank MCAT for being here tonight, documenting the program as a part of their community grants program. I'd also like to call your attention to our land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are an important starting point, but they're just a starting point. And if you're interested in knowing about other ways that our library celebrates and makes Indigenous connections, you can look me up after. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Before introducing Jonathan, I want to offer a little context for our library's emphasis on environmental themes, including this particular program. As many of you know, in October, Missoula Public Library won the prestigious IFLA de Gruyter Green Library Grand Scale Award in a competition with a dozen or so fine libraries from around the world. This achievement was based on a solid green platform of energy engineering designed for wellness and social sustainability. MPL's flagship excels on all points, and we will be sharing more with the community on the full breadth of our greenness, now serving as a global model, over the next few months. The social sustainability plank of our green platform includes a steady stream of programming that provides opportunities to appreciate, engage with, and protect our ecosystem, our home. This can be done through workshops and classes or through arts and culture. And this is where tonight's program comes in. Jonathan Marquis received his BFA at the University of Montana, his MFA from the University of Arizona, and he currently juggles the work of an artist and his work as an adjunct professor in Arizona. However, and lucky for us, Jonathan considers Missoula his hometown and returns to Montana and spends as much time as he can. His unique exhibit, Something to Hold the Glacier Drawing Project, has been up at the Missoula Art Museum this fall and comes down this weekend. If you haven't seen it, please get over there fast, but not tonight. Through December, the library is honored to host several pieces of Jonathan's mostly non-glacier art, and they're out here in the gallery space outside this room, which I think make a lovely companion and a kind of coda to the MAM exhibit. I appreciate the folks, our friends at MAM, who have helped make this happen and who also make sure our library is kept vibrant and fresh with rotations of wonderful artwork from their public art collection. I've known Jonathan since 2014, I think. Our sideburns have grayed at about the same rate, even though I'm much, much older than you. Kind of hard to believe. And I've been following his work and adventures somewhat breathlessly since. When he talks about collaborating with the more than human world to create art, he's speaking my language, and he's going to share more on this approach and his philosophy with us tonight. Jonathan, welcome.
Okay, that's working. Good. Thanks everybody for coming, and it's really great to be back here in Missoula. And Carl, thanks for that lovely intro, and everybody here at the public library, Celia, my friend Lauren as well, for helping out, and of course, again, everybody at the MAM, Brandon, John, Margot, Nicole, and Laura, that all really did a lot of work to get something to hold up and make it such a success. The show is up until Saturday, so Saturday is the last day to see it. Yeah, I recommend, if you've already seen it, go back. It changes. So, so for me, art and life are really the same thing. Drawing is a way for me to learn about, connect, and give my attention to and participate with the places that I live. Drawing is not an end product. Drawing is a method and a process, a way. It's a sort of form of becoming. Welcome, everybody. Come on in. Yeah, it's like Missoula time, right? I still show up late. My license plate still is from Missoula too, even though I don't. It's permanent. I don't want to change it, you know. So yeah, it's, you know, drawing for me, it's a form, it's a method, it's a way of becoming. It's not the production of an object for consumption, but it's the flittering movement of my hand and eyes as they try to participate in the endless cascade of light that flows between me and what I try to draw. I first visited Missoula back in 2002 or 2003. It was spring break, and it was gray and cold, similar like it was this morning. I climbed Mount Sentinel in the fog, and that night it dumped like 2 or 3 feet on Snowball, so I obviously decided to move here. And I really came here to finish my degree at the University of Montana, my painting and drawing degree, and I immediately started hiking and backpacking while I was here. And these are some of the very first drawings I made in Montana. This is from Turquoise Lake, kind of looking, I guess it would be east towards the Bob Marshall. I love you could just see I was like in a race to try and capture what I was seeing, you know, drawing at sort of the speed of light, if you will. A lot of movement, a lot of loose line work, and drawing really fast. I wrote a bit on the back. I was almost 22 years old on September 28th. So I guess I must have been celebrating my birthday. This is looking the other direction at Turquoise Lake, up towards the mountains, and I actually drew my first glacier on accident. This is Sunrise Glacier at above Turquoise Lake there, and I even mentioned it, plus a glacier. I was so impressed that I could see a glacier, you know, not too far from my house. I'd never seen one before, so I was pretty psyched. I graduated in 2005 from UM, and this is my BFA show. I worked as a janitor at the UC. I interned and worked at the Missoula Art Museum when it was just the old building. So it's really great to be back there and have a show there. I participated at a bunch of different events at the MAM. This is me and my friend Josh Quick drawing portraits during one of their Artini events that they used to do. I washed dishes and waited tables at Tipu's Indian restaurant. I got a job doing graphic design at a truck and forklift dealership, and then later the Missoula Independent. And then this is my going away party at the Missoula Independent. I quit my job because I succeeded, my Kickstarter succeeded, and I could quit to draw glaciers. But I reminisce fondly back at my time there at the Indy. During that time, I also had a live-work studio at the Saratana, and this was my dog, Mila. Yes, a lot of y'all know Mila, or did know Mila. She's no longer with us, but this was at the Saratana where I had a studio. I collaborated with lots of folks and put together many exhibitions. I helped co-found the group called the Open Field Artists. We were a performance art group. We did all kinds of crazy things. This was by far the craziest show that we did. I collaborated with Adelaide Every quite a bit and the Open Field Artists. This was the backdrop for the performance that we did. This was called Subject to Gravity. I also collaborated with Adelaide and Marlo Crossofisso, if you know her from her frame shop here in town, Art House, and another one of our friends to create the Burn Street Studios, which later became Von Common. And I'm psyched that Von Common is still going today, and they're actually doing we did our very first Art Blizzard back in, like, I don't know, 2012 or something. And now they're still doing Art Blizzards, and it's actually this Saturday here at the library. So come to check out the Art Blizzard here on Saturday. Those early years of Von Common, we had a space actually just down here in the old radio building, and it was really good fun time. Had a lot of fun happenings and good parties. Oh, more Mila. Maybe this will just be a talk of just pictures of her. But I really just had a really good time being here in Missoula in between 2003 and 2014. This is one of my big shows I did at the Saratana, pointing at the moon. I painted the walls and then hung paintings on it. I was looking to try to apply to grad school and really take my career to the next step, so I wanted to have a big show to do that. In this work, I was really interested in comparing and contrasting superhero figures with historical, religious, and art history works to explore ideas of the sacred and the profane, and to explore contemporary myth-making. The show that really sort of changed my direction from using sort of appropriated imagery was a show I did at the Brink Gallery, Genzel Gallery. Me and my friend David Miles collaborated, and we created a show called Wilderspiel. The work on the left, my painting, which is titled Wilderspiel, was the first time I actually used one of my photographs that I've taken when I was out backpacking to make an artwork. And the diamond shapes that sort of rise out of the center, it was trying to communicate that sort of spontaneous feeling of when you're outside, or you see a glorious sunset, that sort of spontaneous feeling of just excitement and thrill when you find something that really engages your senses. During Wilderspiel, David carved this amazing river out of wood, and then we covered the floor in sod and had a bunch of watering cans around so people could water the grass. So one of the quotes that sort of always, and ideas that sort of stuck with me as a young artist, was this quote from the Zen master Dogen. The blue mountains are constantly walking. If you doubt mountains walking, you do not know your own walking. What I really loved about this quote was that it just gave a sense of animation to the land, that the land was moving, and that there was a relationship between my own walking, my own mind, and the land as well. Some of the very first drawings I did in the vein of the glacier drawing project were in my sketchbook, just probably times out hanging out with friends, Blodgett Canyon, and then Red Rocks. You can see in the Red Rocks one, the paper's torn. There was a torn piece of paper there, and I just drew right through it. So it's kind of on 3 separate pages. But it gave me a clue that, like, hey, I could actually draw landscapes. I avoided landscapes for a really long time, because when I first moved here to Missoula, it just felt like all the work that was being, presented downtown was all just these, weird romantic landscapes that I didn't really like. So I avoided it for a long time, but then found my own personal way through it, because, well, I was, trying to figure out who I was. I was going through a lot of hard times in my life, trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. And I started going out with the intention to draw in the land. I didn't want my recreation to create harm anymore. I used to fish a lot and was like, I don't need to rip lips anymore. Let's make an intention to go draw. And I would draw, I would meditate, and I would explore around seeing where it would capture my attention. And then I would just try and draw the landscapes that I would see. And I would go to the Rattlesnake a lot because it was close. And the Rattlesnake is kind of where I learned how to be solo in the mountains and go backpacking and climbing by myself. So it was a really great way to sort of encounter myself. Here's one from Trapper Peak as well. Really liked the just sort of the patterns, and I don't know if any of y'all have been on Trapper Peak, but just the way the mountains go on forever from there and sort of press upon you. I went to this one tree in the Rattlesnake a lot. It's not too far up the main trail, up on this rocky bluff. And I remember seeing it from a ways away and being like, wow, there's a really interesting tree up there. I should go check it out someday. And started going there a lot. And I would go there every year, every season, just kind of seeing how it changed. I would make lots of drawings from there. And then one year I started coming back to it. And the image on the left, the needles are all green. And then I went to it one year, and then the needles had all turned brown. You can kind of see maybe it had been struck by lightning in the left image, maybe at one point. But then I went the next year, and it was totally seemed dead, I guess. I'm not, I don't study trees or anything, but everything looked pretty dry and dead to it. And I got really concerned that my presence actually had an effect on it. Was it when I was urinating there nearby, or water I brought from town that maybe I poured on the ground when it was real hot, and I was really concerned about that. But it was more likely probably a lightning strike or climate change. Here's a tree on a hot, exposed precipice in the Rattlesnake, and as temperatures are warming, it's a tough place. Or maybe even it was like bark beetles. I'm not entirely sure, but what I left with was that I knew that regardless of whether it was me or us as humans, that I knew that we were implicated in the changing of the landscape and that we were changing the land. Oh wait, y'all hear that? Oh, there's a bear. There's a bear. One of my really big early influences was Doug Peacock and his book, The Grizzly Years. And his book, The Grizzly Years, was kind of like a handbook almost in a way for me of how to walk and move in grizzly territory. And I went to a panel discussion with him and the author, William Kitteridge. And during that talk, I asked him, what can young artists do to continue the work of conservation and climate change activism that he was doing? And he said, go bear witness in your own backyard because you know it best. And I didn't really know how to take it at that moment, but it sounded powerful, and I thought about it for a while. One of the things I really liked about it was that idea of the backyard, that you could stay local, to do these things. You didn't have to go to Antarctica or Greenland to find evidence of climate change. So I love that idea of being local. And I started doing some research and reflecting on it. And there was also a lot of news stories at the time coming out about how glaciers in Glacier National Park might be gone as soon as 2030, 2050. And so that got me thinking, like, okay, well, hey, this is what they're saying in Glacier Park, but I know from my experiences in the Missions that there were glaciers in the Missions and other wilderness areas, and I wanted to find out, well, what's going on there? And I couldn't find really anything online about it at that time, so I thought, well, hey, maybe this could be that big project I was looking for, because I was really looking for a big project that was bigger than me, take longer, that maybe never even be able to end. Something that was really big that I could do for a long time. And glaciers happened to just be in the places, those high alpine places that I really loved going to and spending time in and walking around in. So I started doing some research and found out that there were, at the time, there was 60 named glaciers, but I think there was an inaccurate one listed. So now it's 59 named glaciers that I've been able to find on different maps around the state of Montana. And at that point in time, the glacier drawing project was born. And I launched a Kickstarter for it in May of 2014, and was kind of blown away with how that it succeeded. A lot of that probably had to do with the excellent video that my friends Caitlin Hoffmeister and Lauren Norby created, with a really great soundtrack from Caroline Keyes and Nate Beal. And I think it was really, they were probably the ones that really made it succeed, because I tried to do a Kickstarter again the next year with my own video, and it didn't go. It failed miserably. Friends and community are important. So here's a map this map is in the show. This map was made by my friend Jamie over at Karn Cartographics. If you're not familiar with their maps, definitely check them out. But you can see most of the glaciers are in Glacier National Park. About pretty much half of the glaciers in the state are up there, maybe a little more. And there's several down in the Beartooths, a handful in the Missions, and then a few other ones spread throughout other areas like the Swans, the Cabinets, and the Crazy Mountains. In the early years of doing the glacier drawing project, I really was focusing on, trying to figure out how to draw these spaces. So really trying to figure out the structure and how they organize and arrange. This was the very first glacier that I drew and visited, Blackwell Glacier. I decided to go to this one first just because it was kind of off on its own, and figured, hey, let's go there first. And I hiked up to this spot to get a view. And I would go really early in the season too. This one's on July 7th. And later I learned that it's probably better to go later, because there's still just like a lot of snow up there at that time. So, here's one of Grant Glacier in the Great Bear. So for me, I'm trying to figure out how to draw these things, draw the land around it. And for me, drawing helps you get to know a place better, because you're forced to really look at it. You're forced to see how the space arranges and how the different elements come together, the different forms and volumes. So that dialogue sort of started developing between me and these places. And one of my motivating factors for when I would go out to these places to draw was this idea of giving my attention to these glaciers at the end of their lives, or this time of transition for them, and just being able to sit and bear witness, like Doug Peacock said, and sort of just give them my attention through drawing, and then be able to produce an object that I could then bring back and share with others. That first season, I would take big sheets of paper out. 18 by 24 inch sheets of paper, and I constructed this like custom drawing board. I took a standard masonite drawing board, cut it in half so it could fit in my backpack, got some U-bolts that I drilled some holes through that could go into it, and then all I had to do was find 2 sticks out there, and I could then assemble it, and then I'd have a drawing board out there to draw on these big pieces. And that really created this, I really had this like collaborative sense of unfold drawing these glaciers. It really felt like we were drawing together in a sense. Yeah, I was sitting there and drawing, but without the glacier's presence, without the glacier trying to show itself to me and teach me how to see it. Just really created this really interesting non-verbal dialogue, and it really felt like we were drawing together. And I would just let the visual information try to just imprint itself in my memory, onto my nervous system, so that way when I would then take the drawings back home here to Missoula, I'd have this very visceral sense of how to finish them. And I would use photographs as well to reference to finish the drawings. But there was always this idea of like the visual information coming through my eyes and sort of imprinting itself on me. This one's actually in Carl's collection. That's actually how Carl and I met. He participated in the Kickstarter, and this was the drawing that Carl got. This one is of Sperry Glacier, and I went there, and there were these icebergs in the glacial tarn there, so I took that as my sort of focal point. This one's from Fisher up in the Missions as well. Fisher's a really interesting glacier because the glacier comes down this long fissure in the rock. And then this drawing just kind of, I don't know, did something different that the other ones didn't do. I think maybe it has to do with the negative space in the bottom, but I don't know, the way it sort of emerges out of the space was really intriguing to me. Wolf Glacier in the Beartooths. This one really surprised me. I didn't expect it to be so big, and there's a really large couloir where the glacier comes down off the summit. And then this one is the sort of last one from those first 2 years of the glacier drawing project. This one sort of was an anomaly at the time because I kind of used a little bit more color. The other ones were a bit more monochromatic. And then from the summit here of Mount Grinnell, between Swift Current and Grinnell Glaciers, you could see McDonald Lake off into the distance, and I really wanted to capture that sense of atmospheric perspective and depth that a lot of the previous ones didn't have. So this was kind of like a seed for where things ended up going. During this whole time, this collaborative sense is happening. You know, the glaciers and I are sort of drawing together, and this question really kind of kept emerging: do glaciers draw? I'd walk around near the glaciers, and I would see all of the marks that glaciers would leave on the rocks. And my very first drawing teacher in my first college drawing class told me that drawing is two things. Drawing is seeing, and drawing is mark making. So glaciers are clearly doing half of that. They're making marks on the land. So for me, it really feels like, you know, giving the glacier this, you know, saying that it's drawing just gives it a little bit more agency, in a sense, on the land for me. And then makes me think sort of imaginatively about what a glacier is and what it can do. And that question helped me to then extend the idea of drawing to other mediums, and I started making paintings of my photographs, sort of continuing the idea of what I was doing in Wilderspiel, but then bringing it with glacier into images of glaciers, that photographs that I took while I was out drawing. You know, for these, there's the grid, there's the land in the background, and then there's the grid, and which kind of for me was like the logical, the way we try to logically understand these things, or the rationality that we project onto the land. And then there is the diamonds that are sort of echoing the movement of the land and sort of mediating this whole experience of how we think about the land and the ideas of the land, and how landscape is a cultural construction of storytelling. And I was really trying to understand that. And then also explore this idea of the sublime. I never really knew what the sublime was until I went to grad school. I mean, I knew the word, but I didn't really know what it meant. And then I was doing more research, trying to like make all these paintings, and one of my teachers or fellow students was just like, "Are you talking about the sublime?" I was like, "Oh, I guess I am." And so I was really interested in this sort of like the places where our perception starts to get, or the world gets too big for our perception to handle, and things, the fear, the thrill, the excitement, the joy all kind of converge and sort of clash and then erupt into this experience of spontaneous experience out in the land. This work is called Sub Lime Lime. So I was kind of like making fun of it at that point in time because I was like, I kind of don't really like it, this European idea. And so in this one, I was comparing this idea of, there's a lot of digitally generated imagery on here. So I was thinking about how a lot of the ways many of us actually experience glaciers is through the digital realm. We see it online, right, on social media, on a screen here today, and that might be some of our only encounters with glaciers. And a lot of the ways we come, the ideas that get shaped from our views of the landscape then come from those digital media sources. And so this was a work that explored that. I made this painting called Earth Eater as well that continued to that idea of digital information, photographic information, trying to merge with painterly information and paint application. And I had all this like visceral feeling, out in the land of like the glacier grinding at my gut, grinding at my body. And I wanted to try and communicate that through the repetition of form, the application of paint. And this is probably the first painting that I actually took a disc grinder to and tried to actually physically remove material away from it, much like a glacier removes material away from the land. This is actually a really new one I did in 2022. The newer ones are really trying to use that language of glaciation and mix it with the language of painting to continue this visceral experience of the land and the experience of glaciers, and also the sort of destruction and challenges of climate change. Crunch Time is another new one that I did. This one I wanted to be, it's about the spectacle of climate change. And I've recently gotten back into watching sports. Somehow that's come back in my life now. And so I layered in all these, I also got a huge collection of, found a huge collection of old Sports Illustrateds on the side of the street that someone was getting rid of. And I'm like, I'm a hoarder. Montanas are a little bit hoardy, And I was like, this will make great art material later. So I started, putting all these figures and football players in here. There's actually like some hot rods and cars in there as well. And I really want to, the title Crunch Time comes from that concept of, here we are at the end of the game, right? And climate change is here, it's happening. We don't have a lot of time to solve this issue. And so I wanted that sort of intensity to be in this image. You can see some of the image in the background is of a glacier in Glacier Park called White Crow. And that actually happened to be a real shitty day getting there too. So maybe some of that comes through here as well. That idea of the language of glaciation and trying to communicate this visceral experience really took shape in this series of videos. It's actually a multi-dimensional art piece because it's a sculpture, it's a video, and it's a painting. They would start as these layered ice cakes, I would call them, or I would make a glacier in a chest freezer at my house, and I would layer lots of different materials and images into the ice block, freeze it, and then in the first iteration, I would hang it on the wall and then forcibly melt it with a heat gun, and then I would record that over several hours, and then I would speed it up. Let's see if this plays for us. It's probably about 5 minutes long. I might play it all. We might skip, but we'll watch some of it. So the term ablation is a term that is used to describe the removal of ice or the disappearance of ice in a glacier, but it's also a medical term where ablative surgeries are used to like remove parts of your body or inner linings or things that are no longer healthy. And so for me, that term ablation was pretty explicitly connected that idea of glaciation and put it into the body as like a form of removal. And in the second iteration that I started doing, I started recording them from the top instead of being on the wall. I would have to go into the studio late at night when there was no outside light coming in, so I could control the light. And then these melts would take 8 to 10 hours to do. So I'd be there all night long, hence the heat gun to help speed it up. And then I would video record the process. But once I started doing it from above, things changed a little bit. And those late nights just had some of the most amazing art experiences I've ever had with my own work, because these objects were so beautiful in and of themselves. The color, the melting, they would create these different rivers that would melt through and off the piece. And I would just take so many photographs of these things melting and changing. And I always wish I could, in a way, could preserve the object itself, but that's climate change. Things are disappearing. So when we changed from shooting it from above, something different happened. So I'll play a little excerpt of another video. So this video goes on for like another 10 minutes because these were, 9, 10-hour recordings. And then I would speed them up and they would each come down to about 15 minutes. What I really enjoyed about when I switched the camera angle is that at the start it feels like an ice sheet that's like breaking apart and really communicates this idea of melting ice. And then it transitions into this like hypnotic, moving painting, psychedelic kind of experience. And I did a bunch of these. These are the first time I've ever actually shown these in Missoula, so excited that y'all got to see them a little bit. These videos moved me into another concept that I called a geology of the senses. It was kind of originated a little bit out of this idea of the Anthropocene, and that if the human organism is a geologic agent, then are our human senses also a form of, are our senses also geologic in a sense? Or are our senses a form of geologic extraction from the land? And I started doing all these different installations using a lot of blue lights. I would have the ablation videos in it, and then these are the aftermaths of the ablation site. So I would put a piece of canvas on the wall, and then I would melt it up top, and then the ablation site melted down and formed this pool. So they would create these multi-dimensional artworks, and then I had an image of a glacier in the background. This was the second version of that project. I got rid of all recognizable imagery, and I had the paintings leaning off of the wall, and they were very large. They had blue lights behind it, and so that way they sort of impress themselves upon you while you were in the space. And then the ablation site video played on the floor. The last series that I did that kind of extended this idea of do glaciers draw is the series called Downwaste. It was a series of cyanotypes. For those of you who don't know what a cyanotype is, it's a photographic process where you treat a piece of paper with a light-sensitive solution that then you can expose a photograph to, or in my case, the material interaction with light changes it. And so I would take them out to glaciers in Glacier Park, and I would collaborate with the glacier, sort of manage this situation with the glacier and let the glacier be a part of producing an image of itself. So this one you can see I put it underneath the edge of the glacier to cast a shadow. Then I placed some rocks on there. Sometimes I would allow water to flow over it, or I would place silt and different things on it to get different interactions from it. And they really were like 10-minute performative happenings. Because as soon as you pull that cyanotape out of the light-proof tube, it starts to expose right away. So they were really intense, moving, bending my body with the land, and then would roll them up and then take them back home to rinse them off and finish everything. Because one thing I don't like about the cyanotypes, and one reason why I don't really do them anymore out there, is that no matter how much you try, some of that cyanotype material does get on the land. And now it's just iron. It's not really doing any damage, but I don't know, there's something, the leave no trace ethic sort of bothers me a little bit there. So I haven't done them in a long time. But I really wanted to have the glacier make its own image, make its own drawing. And this is the image, one of the images I created. And Rebecca Solnit's quote about blue really resonated with me during this time from her book, A Field Guide to Getting Lost. The world is blue at its edges and in its depths. The blue is the light that got lost. Light at the blue end of the spectrum does not travel the whole distance from the sun to us. The sky is blue for the same reason, but the blue at the horizon, the blue of the land that seems to be dissolving into the sky, is a deeper, dreamier, melancholy blue. The blue at the farthest reaches of the places where you see for miles, the blue of distance. there was something about, collaborating with a glacier there at the end, the end of its life, using this melancholic blue, this sense of longing and sort of grieving with a glacier through collaborating with it. The first one I actually did was at Sai Glacier. I was really interested in doing it at Sai Glacier because in 2017, Sai Glacier was restated as a active glacier. Prior to 2017, satellite image data suggested it was too small to be a glacier, but field researchers went out and actually walked around and found that there was a lot of ice under the rock, and they reinstated it as a glacier. And to me, that idea of how examining climate change from far away from the satellite doesn't always give you all the information that being on the ground does, and often leads to sort of the narratives of loss that often accompany climate change discourse. And one of the statements that people always tell me when I say, hey, I'm doing a project to draw every glacier in Montana, they say, well, you better hurry up. And I kind of laugh a little bit. It's a joke, but and I get they're trying to cut the tension a little bit, but it also sort of suggests this idea that a glacierless future is, inevitable, and that climate change is inevitable, and that there's nothing we can do about it. And for me, that sort of cynicism doesn't really, why change our behavior if everything's already gone, or if there's nothing we can do about it? So one of the images that I actually found, when I was out hiking, the sort of most, visceral image of climate change is seeing a glacier steam. The sun was so hot on the glacier that day that the cold water was actually steaming off of the rock and off of the ice. And I just couldn't really think of anything more iconic than a glacier actually steaming from the heat of the sun. Is not to see always to see from somewhere? A lot of the glaciers in Montana are no longer considered glaciers, but as part of the glacier drawing project, I drew them anyway. A part of me wanted to go back to these places, see what they are, because they are still important parts of the land. I think sometimes climate change discourse can say things, oh, well, that's not a glacier anymore, so we don't care about it anymore, or don't really think about it. But these places are still really important. There's still ice there, and the water is still important. So, there is still something we can do about it. This is the drawing I made from that place of Herbst Glacier. That lake is actually in Canada. Grasshopper Glacier in the Crazy Mountains is another glacier that's no longer considered a glacier, and I drew that one too. And Boulder Glacier, which is probably the more popular glacier that is no longer a glacier in Glacier National Park. The thing that really makes me want to hurry up, though, is fire. That's one. When I first started this project, I feel like wildfire wasn't really on my mind as much. But now, every year when I go out, it just feels like you're just waiting for the whole forest to blow up. And that's a really scary thing. So I was on this high point drawing a glacier, and I see this little plume start over there, and pretty much immediately started packing up to get out of there, because y'all know how fast fires can spread. But that's probably the scariest thing for me nowadays, is getting caught out somewhere and then a big fire rolls in. The last few things I'm going to show here is I just want to talk about color and the transition that went from the monochromatic works to the more color works. The color for me actually started with the works that are actually out on the wall here. Started in just the time I spent hiking around wilderness areas and different mountain ranges. Sort of, training, I guess, for the bigger glacier drawing trips, but really just early season trips, getting my legs underneath me and just wanting to go out and often be with friends in the mountains. And I felt like I had less attachment to these in a way, so I started just letting the background colors come forward and not put graphite on top of them, and started finding that I was getting really interesting results, and that color allowed me to add a whole nother new infinite realm, a different sense of space, and really communicate the sort of cycle, more of the psychological and emotional experience of what it is like to actually be out there. This was probably one of the first ones I really finished, where I really let the color almost get exaggerated. This was 2020. In 2020, I was still drawing glaciers too, but for some reason, I was still putting graphite on there. I felt like there was something I had to do, like the rock of the graphite pencil, I felt like it had to be on the drawings because of the comparison of a pencil to a glacier, you know, that material connection of rock. But I was letting color get in more and more in these drawings, eventually to the point where I just got rid of the pencil altogether and knew from my experience teaching color theory that I could just combine complementary colors or do various other things to create the sort of value and sense of space that I wanted. And I really just felt like I stepped into a whole nother infinite realm of color, the color spectrum. I got more interested in trying to draw glaciers with the accurate light of the day to communicate more of that experience of being out there, and then even exaggerating the colors. All the colors generally originated in some sense in the land. For those of you who've been in Glacier Park, you know there's a lot of that red rock there, but I just kind of amped it up a little bit. And it really just made the drawings, I guess, more fun for me to make in a lot of ways. But then it just, for me, I don't like doing things rote. If I figure something out, I kind of am done with it. So color allows this whole new sense of dimension to really come in and make these drawings way more exciting. This is a drawing from Ahern. This is probably from one of my more enjoyable trips I went on. It was just an overnighter, but we covered a lot of distance and got to see some really exciting places, walking along the Continental Divide in Glacier National Park. My friend Richard, who's here today, went on me with this trip. We got to do some fun things like hike down this steep gully to traverse around these sort of impenetrable rock faces. We climbed a summit like right around sunset, and we were blessed with like an incredible sunset. And I think this is a lot of the reasons why I continue to do this project after 11 years is that the sort of sensory engagement that of being out in the places. We got to camp right next to the glacier. This is pretty much the closest I've ever camped to a glacier, because most glaciers you can't really camp by for various reasons. Woke up at sunrise, went and made some drawings at the glacier. This is a Pasha Glacier. The water was still frozen on a balmy August night, and there's some icebergs that had calved off of the glacier, and this was the drawing that I made from that. Later that day, we hiked up to this other summit to get a higher view of Apasha Glacier, and we had to make this traverse around this really narrow edge. And I think one of the things that keeps me going is just this ability, my body's interaction with the land, sort of having the body, the somatic experience, be sort of the marker of the land. Got to do some climbing, some fourth-class climbing up to this summit, and then made some drawings of Cheney Glacier as well. And I like this picture because I kind of feel like it looks like I'm floating. And then this is the drawing of Cheney Glacier. The last couple drawings I've made in this project this year, I started putting people in it. I was always really adverse to people and figuration in my drawings and in my artwork. But I started putting my friends in it, who I'd hike with. And just another way, it creates a little bit of scale relationship, but also tells, reminds, I guess makes that human connection to the land, and that even though, we call these places wilderness, right? They've been inhabited for a long time. And part of, they are human places. They are cultural places as well. this is the last one here of Grinnell, Jim, and the Salamander Glacier from Mount Grinnell. The figures are way down in the bottom right, and this was a bit of an ode to a friend of mine that died of brain cancer, who we used to go out with a lot, and just kind of wanted to, honor him and our experiences together in the mountains. And when you draw glaciers for this long and think about ice for this long, your life gets sort of wrapped up into the layers of the ice, and everything kind of, all your life is in comparison to melting ice and the land. So, I guess the question, does a glacier draw? I don't know. Maybe it's unanswerable. Maybe it's best left being unanswered and more of an imaginative inquiry. But one thing I do know is they've certainly drawn me. They've certainly changed my life, drawn me to new friends, and certainly have drawn me here with you all tonight. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer some questions. I also have some little books up here if anybody's interested in one of my little Earth Eater books. It has some glacier drawings in it and a bunch of other stuff and some writing as well. But does anybody have any questions they want to ask or anything? Or did I read enough to agree? Yeah.
I was curious about how you settled on graphite and pencil as your medium of choice.
How did I settle on graphite pencil as my medium of choice? Probably because they're so immediate, I don't think this microphone works. That microphone. I've always just drawn. As a kid, I've drawn. I don't remember not drawing. And I think I originally chose graphite because of its connection to the rock and the materiality of glaciers. And then the colored pencils just allowed me to sort of tone it in the background a little bit. It was also a technique that developed out of my time as working as a graphic designer. You can use like blue colored pencil and then remove that in Photoshop. And so I was doing a lot of drawing like that. And then I just started naturally then making drawings with those same materials. I guess if anybody went to Ball State with me in 2000, I had a drawing teacher named John Gee who was just like obsessed with colored pencils, and we would do these huge drawings in colored pencils, full-size figures, and just forced to like them, I guess. Yeah.
On your melting artwork, you had some kind of paint media on there.
Yes.
What was it? Do you mind me asking?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. The white ones, I would just put gesso. Are you familiar with gesso? It's like a primer for painting. So I would start with gesso to create the white surface, and then I would embed just paint, powdered pigments, powdered charcoal, so carbon, and then other materials, sometimes dirt, sometimes rocks, ink, collage materials, and then that way it would start to move and flow and kind of become activated. Any more fun? I love answering questions.
If we don't have more, Jonathan, will you stick around for a little while if people want to check out the art out in the lobby here?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We've got a bunch of new drawings out on the lobby, and I'll sit over there with the books if anybody wants to come up and chat and ask any additional questions. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks for being so patient today, and thanks for coming so much.
Thank you, everybody.